The last year saw global economies brought to their knees, forcing governments to rethink and rebuild. But what lessons have been learned from the turmoil of the past 12 months? For answers, we cross now to our correspondent Dmitry Medvedenko. Hello, Dmitry.
Hello, Matt. Exactly 1 year ago, on the 15th of September 2008, one of the biggest players on the U.S. investment bank business, Lehman Brothers, went belly up. And this is the day when the world saw the practical results of the expansionist, uncontrolled expansionist program policies that banks were leading. This is when people started asking, is it okay for banks to continue what they're doing? Is it okay for traders with testosterone boiling in their veins to continue making very risky decisions without the financial guarantees to back them? Is it okay to have an alternative? Either the bank goes bankrupt or the government has to pay use taxpayer money. Well, this is the day when a real crisis of confidence began, and this is the day when people started thinking that this is a real beginning of the global financial crisis. The bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers caused a real turbulence of the market. On average, global markets nosedived 10% on the day. And in Russia, the situation on that day went from bad to worse, literally, because by that time, oil prices had already been going down and the government was already leading a policy of devaluating the national currency, the ruble. So what really happened in the financial sector wasn't very big news. On the next day, one of Russia's investment banks, Kit Finance, refused to fulfill its obligations for the first time, and in a few weeks it was sold for 100 rubles, or $3, to a consortium of two companies, the railroad monopoly and Russia's diamond monopoly. So this is really what happened. With the big names in the financial sector weren't really touched. We didn't see massive bankruptcies, partly because of a very quick reaction from the Russian government. The people, the regular Russian person in Russia, of course, felt the devaluation of the ruble, which happened over the 6 months from August to January 2009. And this sawtooth wasn't pulled out one day, was wobbled until it could go out. And this was probably a good idea because it didn't create a massive panic in Russia. People didn't really queue up to exchange their savings in the Russian ruble into other currencies. So really it wasn't felt as hard as probably many of us remember here in Russia, the crisis of 1998, when the government defaulted on its foreign debt. But on the other hand, other sectors which are not related to the financial sector were very badly hit by the crisis. When you have a broken limb, when it gets hit, it causes a lot of pain. For example, one of these broken limbs on the Russian industry was Avtovaz, the biggest car maker in Russia. It had already been suffering problems with its finances over the previous preceding couple of years, and of course that day they understood that there wasn't really much light at the end of the tunnel for them, and yesterday they announced they would cut another 5,000 jobs, and some speculate another 35,000 are still to go. Well, on the other hand, a lot of people still think that the situation we're having right now is a result of the policy that the government has been leading. I mean, the situation we're having today, when, of course, the situation is completely different from what it was a year ago. GDP, of course, is falling down. It's still declining 10%, but the worst, the government says, is over, and the movement is always forward and only up at this time, as Elvira Nabiullina, Russia's economic minister, said in a previous meeting with the Prime Minister and with the President. And so, in order to evaluate the policy of the Russian government, I earlier spoke to the chief economist of Trust Bank, Yevgeny Nadorshin. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Initial reaction was very fast, especially when financial sector problems are concerned. Government did everything possible in order to keep the sector stable, and that's a good sign and good side of the anti-crisis plan, anti-crisis activities. If you take other anti-crisis measures into account, unfortunately problems arise. we did not manage to present our anti-crisis program as a consecutive steps driving Russian economy out of the crisis. Unfortunately, there were a lot of particularities, like Pikalova, like Avtovaz, like others, which, frankly speaking, cannot be considered as a, good kind of anti-crisis measures, because you can't help every single company or several companies which are in trouble. There are a lot of particular companies which may face problems for different reasons. In fact, the anti-crisis problem is not only to save them, but is to save the whole economy. And as a consequence, unfortunately, Russian economy has been falling when many economies already began to restore, to revive.
That was the chief economist of Trustbank, Evgeny Nadorshin, who also mentioned that today, for him, it's much easier to work, as 1 year ago he had to review his monthly forecasts, well, almost every week, because the situation was changing so dramatically. And today, of course, there's much more confidence in what will happen tomorrow. It's much more easier to foresee what will happen, of course. Also, there's a lot of confidence coming back onto the U.S. market, where the unemployment rate, which is one of the key factors a lot of people are monitoring, is gradually going down at the moment. So really, a lot of people are with all eyes focused on the U.S. economy. Of course, a lot of people are thinking that maybe the worst is over. They're hoping that the worst is over. But on the other hand, the people in the United States are not so confident. Their life is not really changing to the better. Let's watch this report from my colleague Anastasia Churkina.
September 15th marks an economic 9/11 that shook the U.S. Lehman Brothers, a global financial services firm, collapsed and became a symbol of the largest bankruptcy in American history. Now, some are already beginning to cheer in hope of a light at the end of the tunnel.
The work of recovery continues. And though I will never be satisfied while people are out of work and our financial system is weakened, we can be confident that the storms of the past 2 years are beginning to break.
Others say recovery and relief are nowhere in sight. Among them is Transcaster Gerald Celente.
It hasn't ended. That was only the beginning. We're going to see a lot more. There is no recovery. It's a cover-up. They're covering it up with stimulus packages, with buyouts, with bailouts. It's not going to fix the problem.
15 million people in America are jobless, and what caused this didn't happen overnight.
Put it this way, in order to have a $20 to $30 trillion global blow-up, which we had across late 2008, early 2009, you don't have a few bad apples and you don't have a few simple mistakes. You have everybody basically bought in on a system that's fundamentally unsound.
With unemployment in the double digits, millions have lost their homes. This homeless shelter in New York fills up with people who have nowhere to live every night. Italo used to work in construction, but after losing his job, he ended up on the street. Now he's a father unable to support his 2 daughters.
It was pretty hard to get a job. I found the jobs off the books, you know, where they pay cash, but it was 2 or 3 days out of the week, and some weeks it was not even 1 day. He'll let me know when he needed me, and it was pretty hard.
Another person at the shelter, Arlo, lost all of his savings almost in the blink of an eye. With that, he also lost hope and turned to drugs and alcohol.
Got laid off, then I started dipping into my savings, so I lost 150 grand in a matter of a couple days due to companies going under and stock market crashing.
Like millions of Americans, these people went from feeling safe and secure to having nothing. In his documentary, filmmaker and blogger Danny Schechter dissects why America's economy collapsed. He calls the whole thing a crime story.
People are suffering, but the people on Wall Street who are responsible for this crisis have yet to be held accountable, have yet to be punished, have yet to even be investigated in any serious way.
While accountability is still in the offing for those who may have impacted the financial collapse, this man didn't manage to escape punishment. Sam is a former white-collar criminal who says he used to rip off people and institutions. Why? He says for fun and profit. The former fraudster says there are many still out there just like him who have been having a blast on Wall Street before everything was revealed.
White-collar crime is very complicated, very complex, takes enormous resources to investigate. We have less resources investigating white-collar crime in the United States of America than we have police officers in the city of New York.
So could it be way too early for Americans to even start thinking of throwing on the party hats?
When I read Warren Buffett, one of the top investors in America, saying we haven't solved the problems yet and that he's taking his money out of the stock market because he thinks it's very volatile, and, the dollar itself, is being questioned as a reserve currency. And you realize this crisis is much more deep than people are telling us.
Financial analyst Max Wolf also says recovery, for now, is a myth.
We have done almost nothing to solve any of our structural economic problems. And we see that in our recovery of the last 6 months, in which the bottom 80% of Americans see their lives get harder every day.
On the anniversary of a symbol of America's strength collapsing, some are alleging recovery is underway in the U.S. However, many believe what's happening now is just the beginning, and things could still turn tougher than ever. Anastasia Churkina, RT.